Welcome to the Energizing America podcast, where we talk all things energy, why we need it in our business, community, and life. Really excited tonight. For one, I'm in the great state of North Dakota. I don't get to do podcasts in the great state of North Dakota all that often because I have a little studio at home. But out in Watford City, and ran into this great fella that works in the oil field, Luke Wurtz. And turns out this dude's an author. He's not just an oil field worker who knows how to put his boots on, but an incredible author of kids books, which is important to us here at Westcom to Kids. And so really excited and just want to say welcome to you, Luke, and hoping you can kind of just kick us off here and tell us a little bit, tell our audience a little bit about who you are and your family and where you're at in life.
Sure. Well, thanks first of all, I guess, Shane, for having me. Honored to be on the podcast. A little bit about me. Just grew up in Western North Dakota, just kind of your average farm kid, and decided I wanted to be an electrician. And been in the oil field for about 12 years now. And the whole author thing was always just kind of a passion of mine. Like I always wanted to do it. And then kind of as you know how it is when you get older, like life kind of slips away and there's things you look back and you think, gosh, I should have started that or I should have done this. And kind of the thing that hit me the most was when my first son was born. I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I better do it, right now, and just no excuses. Just if I can't find the way, just make the way to do it. And that's kind of how the Oscar Little Pumper book just got started.
Awesome. So, just a farm kid from Western North Dakota, and it's funny whenever I hear that. Look, my mom and dad came out in North Dakota in the '80s because the economy was tough, and so I was one of 9 kids, and I was born in Hazen, North Dakota, right there by Beulah. Dad was working at the the coal gasification plant at the time, constructing it, and so whenever I hear people say, just a kid from Western North Dakota, I think, man, if the world only knew what in the world happened right over in Western North Dakota. Like tonight when I was at a restaurant over here in Watford City, just the most incredible people, these families that are running around. It's just such a sense of normalcy. I talk to my wife about this a lot that, man, in North Dakota, it's just normal. There's normal people hanging around doing normal things. You see kids out playing and the like. So no
Mhm.
doubt this is kind of what transcends into your books, and what speaks so much through your books is being a dad and going out and telling the story about. I mean, Oscar he's a pump jack out in the oil field, and he just has kind of a fun little story. So what drove you? You're talking about you have your first kid. Now's the time. Let's start writing some books. Why'd you pick something in the oil field? Just because that's where you work, or what kind of drove that as being your first book?
The big thing that kind of, made me think about writing Oscar the Little Pumper was I was just kind of sick and tired of us all that work in this industry being demonized because I feel like, in this world, everybody has their own job, everybody contributes. And I feel like there's not, and like a lot of the, not to talk bad about like bigger cities or anything, but I feel like there's a lot of people that grow up and they don't understand like where their eggs come from or like where their beef comes from, any of that. And I guess with Oscar Little Pumper, there's a lot of people that they don't realize that basically everything they touch every single day comes from oil and gas products. I mean, they even to go as far as renewables, like all this new renewable technology is awesome, but as far as I'm concerned, it's job security for us in the oil and gas industry because you can't have renewable anything without oil and gas. So that's why, like in a couple of my books, it just there's little things thrown in there like oil makes shampoo, oil makes balloons, credit cards, phones, and I just kind of want that to be like a little light bulb moment for kids and maybe even the parents that you kind of just take stuff for granted every day. I mean, we live in such a blessed world where I mean, there's no better time to be alive in history than right now. I know, like I often think about my ancestors and stuff, and like even just when they homesteaded out here, like man, those winters must have been brutal. And how lucky are we that we can crawl in the pickup and turn on the heater, or, like even just have a light bulb instead of a candle. And I know this place that I live on right now, we built a house out here about a couple of years ago. Had kind of an interesting story where there was a woman who was never married and she homesteaded out here herself, and so she chopped wood every day. I mean, she turned this yard into just a beautiful place, planted all the trees, but she lived out here all by herself. And all the time, I just think about the hardships she went through. And it's just kind of like, it's like a little inspiration for me, or just, it makes me like, not take everything for granted. Or like if I'm playing with the kids outside in the yard, I think, oh, like she must have planted this tree here. And I wonder what she would think, to see our family living here. And, just she was a great human being. She was a great money saver in the community where I live, Makoti. Actually, when she passed away, all of her money went to the swimming pool that's in town. So just
That
a
is so cool.
really good human being.
Yeah, and I think the bringing that story from a young child, which they learn so much. Their brains are just eager for anything they can get their hands on, right? And whatever gets deposited in there stays there at a young age. It really builds a fundamental. But I loved when I sat down with my kids and when I seen that you had started writing, and if I remember right, was it in 2020 your first one when it came out?
2021. It's been about a couple
2021.
months.
So right after
Yep.
COVID, though, or
Yep.
kind of still in the midst of COVID, right? And our industry was just under siege. And I was a business owner and out in North Dakota and kind of stressed out about all these families that are relying on Westcom for a living and a
Oh,
great living and honorable work. These dudes are doing honorable work. Like, what is the difference between the doctor saving somebody's life and the person who's given the tools to the doctor to save the life, right? Like, you can't have a hospital without oil and gas, and just feeling kind of wound up about all that, not having a good outlet. And then my kids go to a great school. It's got a environmental focus to it, which okay, whatever. But they're forgetting to teach some of this other stuff too. So I was just feeling so wound up by it. And I ran into the Oscar book series and I fell in love, man. Just to sit down and be able to read this book with my children and they start asking questions like, really, Dad, oil and gas isn't a credit card? How is oil in a credit card? Because in their head, they just see Dad go to the gas station, and that's as much as they think about oil, where they go to school and they learn about how terrible oil is. So I just really loved that fact that it not only inspired little kids about what like being an honorable position, being an electrician is like a career you should be proud of and something you can do. And oh, by the way, you can work in this amazing industry of oil and gas, and you can touch every aspect of somebody's life as you go through. And for me,
right.
it was a reminder during those dark moments of COVID that this was a fight worth fighting for. And so I know just on behalf of myself, and then of course I fell in love with the book. So you actually get this idea though. You were saying it was boiling around in your head. You have your first kid, you think why not now and just send it. Tell me about, did you do a ton of research on how to publish a book, where to go? Like that had to be been quite a thought process.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources online, and basically there's no like set guide to how you want to do it or how to do it. There's nobody that says, okay, you got to do this, you got to do this. You just have to comb through like hours of YouTube videos and read different forums, and that's kind of how I figured it out. And I tried to do it as legit as possible, where I started my own LLC for it and everything. And I just, I wanted to be thorough. Like I knew, like when you do the first anything, you make mistakes and stuff. And there's things like I actually just upgraded the illustrations on the Oscar book here recently, just got them like 100% remastered because there's like little things here and there that the typical person probably isn't going to notice. But I look at it and like, oh, I could have done that better. Or, you kind of just like do something and then you like, it's amazing what you pick up just from the experience, like it's just like your next one is so much better. Like I felt like my next book, Bob the Big Pumper, I felt like that was 1,000 times better than the Oscar one. I mean, it's probably not as popular, but I just like everything about that book I really enjoyed. And so,
Sure. I think, Luke, one lesson in that for me is and it transcends into business and just everywhere, every part of our life. Like even having your first child, is it not the most scary thing ever? Like you're holding this precious angel and like you don't even know where to put it. Like where do I put her without hurting her? And
yeah.
baby number two comes, and you're a little bit more experienced and there's a little bit more excitement about it, right? So did you find that? I mean, I know you said you felt more successful with that second book, but don't you feel like that's what it is so often is we get like stuck because we're scared of the unknown, right? And you
Mhm.
did as much research as you could, but still you jump in, you had to hit some surprises along the way on that first
Oh,
book.
oh yeah, for sure. And there's days where you want to quit, or it's days, you get insecure, or it's like, are my friends going to make fun of me that I'm, writing a children's book? But then you just got to like, if you want to do it, you just got to not care and just do it. I think
Figure
that's the
it.
best advice I can give to anybody. It's like if you truly want something, like most people aren't thinking about what you're doing anyway, so just do what you want. Like who cares? And no matter what you do in life, like I had some really interesting people that reached out to me with some crazy hate mail over a children's book, and I just said yeah, I was like if a children's book offends you, you need to basically get a life. So
You're probably not the
you're gonna
person
have
I.
that no matter.
Right. Well, and it's funny how much emphasis we put on what people are going to think. And I remember in after, some years at Westcom, and all of a sudden the Christmas party is getting to be more people and I'm feeling some anxiety about even going and like giving a simple update, right? And my wife had mentioned to me, she's like, Shane, nobody cares about you. They just want to hear the message. Like, why do you? Nobody cares about you. And it's like, oh yeah, duh. Mr. Conceited over here. I'm trying to figure out like, oh, what should I wear and how should I talk and what do I'm just a bumbling fool. Nobody cares. They just want to hear the information. And I've found that through the years that it is so odd how much emphasis starting right with me, will put on what other people think. Whether it's you
Right.
go out on a job site and somebody isn't wearing their gloves and they're supposed to wear their gloves and you're like, ooh, do I tell them? Do I not? Do I tell? And it's like, hey, Bob, one of our requirements is we wear gloves. Do I need to get you a pair? Turns out Bob don't even care. Oh yeah, absolutely. Totally forgot. So he goes and gets his gloves on. And if we
Yep.
can keep things at basic, man, we can do incredible things like write children's books for a time. So you did your first one, learned some lessons along the way. What'd you do? Throw it on Amazon? Did you have to have a huge upfront cost to print some?
No, actually, right now, just on Amazon, I use their print on demand service, which is pretty nice because like I I didn't feel comfortable about dropping, 5, 10 grand on a whole bunch of copies and they weren't going to sell. So like you get a little bit less royalty, but basically when somebody buys one, they print one out. So it's kind of a rigmarole getting it all set up, but it's nice that you just collect like a little bit, rather than, oh my gosh, I got 10,000 books sitting in my garage. What am I going to do with these things? So, and
Well,
I'm pursuing different things right now, and it'll probably be a couple months, but I am looking at getting into Barnes and Noble, and I'm trying to like format everything to do hardcover versions and stuff. So I'm hoping here in a few months you can see them on some Barnes and Noble shelves. I've been talking with some people, so I've kind of been lazy with it here like the last 6 months. I haven't really done much with the books, but now I'm starting to pick up a little bit again. So
Well, there's a couple of things in there, Luke. For one, I mentioned before our podcast, shamefully, that I was all excited about your books, and especially after COVID was kind of winding down a little bit, and you're trying to recover and tell the story, and ordered a bunch of them and started giving them out. And then after I set up this podcast, I go online and I see you've written a lot more. So lazy? I don't think so, especially with a couple kids running around and a third one on the way. I don't think lazy can be part of that equation, but priorities shift, right? And sometimes we have to, and I think that's another piece that I've learned through life, like building a business from nothing to, a couple hundred employees and becoming
yeah,
employee owned and all of those steps along the way, you have to be okay with not making progress on some things at sometimes because you got to deal with today while you're building tomorrow. And that can be difficult to do. But who I was going to ask on the books, like what I loved, it's funny that you're making fun of your own illustrations in your first book because that's what I loved about it. Like my kids would just so enjoy seeing more of the oil field, and it felt so real in your illustrations. Do you do the illustrations?
no, I actually hired the illustrations. Like if you look on the front of my book, it's Maria Koalis is who I hired, and there's lots of different sites that you can go online and you can just talk with people. And like I talked with, I want to say maybe 10 or 15 different illustrators, and I liked Maria's work, and I thought she did a great job on the previous projects. She had worked with other people, and just kind of got to know her a little bit, and asked her if she'd do this book, and just kind of went from there, I guess. But
That's awesome. What did your wife think when you said you were going to write a children's book?
oh, she thought it was nuts. She thought that, it was something, a fad of the day or something, that I would give up on halfway through. But when like kind of when it went viral, when when I first released it and stuff, she's like, I kind of thought you were crazy, but she's been super supportive through the whole thing and stuff. And she thinks it's pretty cool. And my kids get a kick out of the books and stuff. And
Sure.
they'll go through spurts where they'll want to read Oscar or they'll want to read, like Tank the T-Rex, my son really likes now. So
That's awesome. What did you do? The kids aren't old enough to go to school, but can you imagine what kind of book they gonna want to show for show and tell? My dad's an author. Here you go. What do you feel like when your wife kind of set that challenge out, or you maybe inherently knew that she's thinking you're kind of nuts, and did it give you increased motivation to make sure it happened?
yeah, a little bit. I mean, not gonna lie, I just, I kind of the thing is, and maybe it's just because I'm a stubborn like farm kid and I come from family members that are stubborn, but when I get an idea set in my head, I just want to do it and I want to see it through because if I don't complete it, I'm just gonna feel terrible about myself. So
Yeah.
I guess my
Well,
my whole goal with these books too is, I just want to create some like little lighthearted entertainment that even if it creates a couple minutes of like somebody just like you were saying, like that's the best part of this whole thing is hearing that you read it like to your kids. And I've had people reach out to me on LinkedIn And there was one guy, there's that hard hat scene in the book where like Drew puts on his hard hat. And this guy had messaged me that his son will not read the book without having a hard hat like toy on because he just loves that part of the book. Like that alone, like all the hours, all the effort, like everything, like all the headaches and stuff, it's all worth it just to hear stuff like that. And I just kind of hope that the books create like a little bit, and maybe I'm thinking too deep into this, but just a little bit of appreciation. Like, so, you might read that book and you're now appreciative of the oil and gas. Well, like maybe you look at other things a little bit different. Like, oh, I'm thankful for the rancher that, takes care of his cattle so that we can have beef or, because I mean, we all play a part in this world. We can't all do the same thing. And we should be appreciative about what everybody does, no matter what they do, because it all contributes to this great country that we have and just great world, really. So.
Yeah, I think that is one of the benefits from that book is it forces you to stop and ponder. Like, think about how many of these people are doing such important aspects of our life that we just never ever considered. So when you sat down to do this kids book, you didn't, it's not like you set up your LLC and did a P&L and figured, okay, I'm going to make this much revenue and I'm going to have this much profit. You just sent it and said, man, I just want to write a book and tell a story.
Literally just took out a notebook and I had thought about like, how I envisioned Oscar in my head and then trying to like work with that. My illustrator, there was, some kinks there and stuff. And then finally I was like, yep, that's what's in my head. Once, that was kind of a whole ordeal. That took a few months just to get the shape of Oscar, get the crank weights to right, the horse's head right, everything, it's just, like I said, you just take it little bit by little bit. I don't know if if you've ever read Atomic Habits by James Clear, but he talks about, getting 1% better every day. And I try to apply that in my life. And that definitely, when it comes to my books and stuff, it's just like, okay, I might do this a little bit this day. I might, figure out this part and stuff, or, some days I'll struggle for a few days and I won't get anything done either, but then kind of get the itch again. And, just kind of just part of the process, I think. I think as long as you don't give up, you just.
Were you a writer through school?
No, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I was a C's get degrees type of person. Like, I liked history. Like, I've always been really fascinated by United States history. But as far as English, I mean, if there was anybody like least likely to write a book in my big class, like it was me. So.
But what's a big class? What was your big class? How many kids?
Eight people in the town of Makoti.
8 people graduate from this little town in North Dakota. This dude goes on to do incredible things in the oil industry, becomes a dad, a farmer, has a beautiful wife and some kids and contributing. It's just awesome. One other thing I was going to mention for me and what employees have told me that they really like about the book when they get it is it's just such an easy read with that subtle message. I think in today's world, and there's good in it, but there is so many self-help books and there's so many podcasts and just it feels like there's so much noise coming at us and you listen to this book or listen to this podcast and you think, man, Luke wrote a book, I gotta go write a book. And so pretty soon people are just like all over the place. And I appreciated that. And I had one of the guys, especially he heard I was doing a podcast with you, and he tells me, make sure he knows I love the simplicity of the book. And he's a big podcast listener and a big reader. And I think that is true in today's world. I find that in myself, I don't know if it's imposter syndrome necessarily, because I don't feel that I care what people think necessarily, but I definitely pay attention when I hear something and think, oh, I should go do that. I don't have the same skill set as an electrician out in the oil field. I was out last week in Carlsbad, New Mexico. It was 109 degrees. And these electricians down there, they're Caliche, they got a pickaxe and they're trying to get through that nasty soil, right? Yesterday, I'm over in Newtown, North Dakota, trying to help some electricians. I grabbed the pickaxe from them. I went for like 5 minutes. I mean, it's 88 degrees or something. It was so bloody hot yesterday. And they're telling me, oh, this is beautiful compared to the day before. It was so windy that the sand was blowing in our eyes, And I'm thinking, I'm such a wipeout. I got to do something incredible like these people do. But I think so often we got to go right back to what you were saying here a few minutes ago, that we all are doing our little part. And as long as we do our part well, then the whole world goes on well, right? And then there's these great communities like Watford City or Makoti or Minot, North Dakota, Williston, North Dakota, that get to prosper. And oh, by the way, they're ensuring that the folks in New York City can heat their buildings and get on their corporate jets and fly around America. So it's just that simplicity of it. And for folks listening, boy, you can go on Amazon, you can get them printed, you can read them on your Kindle. Are there other ways to get them, or is that where they get the books?
Yeah, that's all for right now. I mean, like I said, I'm working on the whole Barnes and Noble thing. I'm hoping to get that taken care of in the next, couple months. There's kind of a lot of hoops to jump through on that. There's a lot of formatting stuff that I still need to do, but I'm just hoping to get one kind of out there, and then some of my other books that have kind of been picking up in sales here lately, I want to get those over to Barnes and Noble as well.
Cool. I bet that's an interesting adventure to be working with a big corporation and trying to convince them your book is worthy of a shelf.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So, which book now out of these 13, which I guess a couple of them are, I do have these Oscar and Bob's coloring book. The kids have liked those ones. I've got the Go to Bed Cricket. I've got the Ferg Don't Eat the Sand, One Pebble Away. I've got the Bob the Big Pumper, Oscar the Little Pumper. I haven't gotten the Tink the T-Rex Learns How to Tell the Truth yet, or Oscar Meets Widton, or I Love Reading to You. I thought that I Love Reading to You. That must have been inspired because your wife is currently expecting her what?
Yep. Yep. That one took me a long time. I actually worked on that book, I think for, man, I want to say almost a year and a half, from writing it to getting it all illustrated to completing it. I think that's my best book. And that actually, it's kind of funny because the sales of that book just slowly grow every single month. Like it's overtaken Oscar every month now. I think so. Like that'd be the one to check out if you want to check out any more of them. I'm pretty proud of that book. Like the illustrations in that I feel like are pretty phenomenal. Like the lady I hired to do that, she did a great job.
Well, I read the summary about it, and from what I can tell, it's talking about how the importance of a dad reading to the baby in the womb.
Mhm.
And I've done some volunteering at our school at home, and for a while I was trying to go once a week and read to kids, and it is unbelievable the power of reading at a young age compared to waiting until they're too old. There is so much power in that. And if there was one thing I could convince folks to do, it would be just that. Start reading. And it comes from a liar's mouth because I didn't do enough of it as a kid. And so I actually didn't even pick up the love of reading until I went to college, unfortunately. Then I started
Mhm.
learning all this stuff in books, and I'm like, what? Like, this has all been at my fingertips before I just didn't do it. And there's two big things that happen because you know what it's like in the oil field, right, Luke? These folks are working some mad hours.
Oh,
And
for sure. Yeah.
and sometimes we put family off to the side, and it's not intentional, but it becomes almost like part of the culture, right? It's funny because you'll be out on location and at lunch or at break, you're all talking, and there's all these incredible guys and gals talking about their families at home, and they're doing this for them. And but the problem is they get caught up in it. It's the long days. They're working 60, 70 hours a week, sometimes 80 on extreme weeks, and then they start getting used to that income, and then it kind of builds upon itself, and all of a sudden it'll be a whole 6 weeks and they haven't even went home and seen their family, right?
Right.
Because it's hard to bring their families to Western North Dakota for some of these folks. But just that I love reading to you and reminding you those parents that this starts right in the womb also has this little side benefit that while we love this industry, it's not everything that we are. We have way
Right.
more important work within the four walls of our homes. And that is
Mhm.
being a dad
Absolutely.
and being a supportive spouse to our wives. And they put up with a lot for us being in the industry. So I really thought that would be a good subtle reminder with that book too. Like, hey, take a second and read to that baby, get in the habit. Because I'm sure your boys, for mine, I got seven of them, and every one of them has always loved if at bedtime, you go to tuck them in, grab a book, read a couple books, say the prayer, good night, love you. Guaranteed good night's rest for all parties involved.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, books are so incredible. I mean, and not to sound cheesy, but I mean, basically you can get somebody's whole life experience for $20. And I'm an avid reader, like I like to read, but I find myself not having enough time, probably just because I don't make enough time. But when I'm driving a lot at work, I listen to Audible and I just power through books. And it's honestly changed my life. I know back in like 2019 or so, I just got so sick and tired of like you just listen to the news. I mean, it's just poison coming in your ears, and it's just I just don't feel like the world is actually that bad. And I just kind of decided at one point I was like, I can't take listening to this news stuff anymore. Like I'm probably a little bit more uneducated when it comes to current events just because I don't pay attention. I just try to educate myself and I just try to take action on what I've learned to just try to improve things. And that's like honestly the best thing I've ever done in my entire life was just try to shut all that out, just try to like love my family. Not that I'm perfect, my wife will definitely tell you I'm not perfect, but yeah, for sure. It's just there's so much power in books that people don't realize. And I just feel like if we like my boys and my girl that we're expecting in January, I do want them to get into books at a younger age than because I read some when I was a kid. I read like the Harry Potter books, but kind of when you get into high school, it's like you don't really, you know, you kind of lose it and stuff. And like you said that you started reading in college. I didn't even read anything hardly through college. I mean, I kind of just did what I had to do to, complete my degree and stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just wish I would have got back into books a lot earlier because it's incredible. Like once you become an avid reader, I don't think you'll ever go back.